Let's get into our first topic. Are police right to reveal the ethnicity of suspects? The government has welcomed new guidance which encourages police to disclose the ethnicity of suspects charged in high-profile cases. However, the grandfather of Bebe King, one of the 3 girls killed in the Southport attack last year, says the new guidance should be reconsidered. Weston King says someone's ethnicity or immigration status is irrelevant as the propensity to commit crime happens in any ethnicity, nationality or race. He also says his family was failed by the likes of Reform and the right wing as they tried to make political gain from their tragedy. Paula, what do you think? Should we be releasing this kind of information?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to say, Georgie, that Weston King is absolutely right. There is no scientific evidence that says there is anything linked in terms of what I look like to my propensity to commit a crime. It's absolute nonsense. And I am gobsmacked that in 2025 there are educated people sending a message out there that an asylum seeker is suddenly a threat. It's not the asylum seeker who is the threat. It is a criminal who is a threat. And that criminal comes in many different shapes, sizes and guises. Now, what our police forces up and down our great nation have been forced to do because of misinformation, because of disinformation, is to get as much information out there as possible without damaging the investigative process that could put a criminal trial at risk.
Yeah, because you're a barrister. You know about this.
Yes.
That if they release that information, that then can undo the case.
Absolutely. But what's happening is we now have this massive conspiracy theorists that exist who think they know better, who think they have some kind of secret knowledge that something is going on up there, up there in the higher echelons of the law or in policing or in government, and that they are spreading this information. What concerns me is this isn't just the person on the street. We've got MPs who are doing it, Georgie. We had Rupert Lowe the other day pulling up a tweet about how he could see charity rowers and were accusing them of being illegal migrants. This is happening too much, too often, and so I understand why, for example, Merseyside police were forced to release the information about Paul Doyle very quickly, and I think they were right to do that in that information. What are the police being forced to do now? They are being forced to protect society as a whole against far-right members of the public who want to riot, who feel that they are protecting women and girls against these violent people, when actually what we know from the statistics so far is that 83 to 85% of white men are committing acts of sexual abuse against women and girls. I'm not seeing these marches, I'm not seeing these protests out on the street against that particular demographic. Why not? Because this is about racism and not about protecting society.
So you think by releasing that information, you are adding fuel to the fire when it comes to these far right? You're sort of playing into what they want. I think
actually I have to give Merseyside police credit for releasing the information in relation to Paul Doyle. They had to do that. They had to do that because already there was false information coming out online that this person was an asylum seeker, that this person was an immigrant, etc., blah, blah, blah. So they had to get that information out to ensure that there wasn't rioting. Yeah.
Rick, let me bring you in on this. Where do you stand? Do you think it's good that police are releasing this kind of information? Do you think it helps stop that vacuum of information that sometimes happens on social media?
Well, I don't think you can have it both ways. So I don't think in the case of Merseyside Police you can have it so we release the name and the person, the subject of where he was from, that he was a British national, a local man, that he was a white man. So we can do that in that case, but we can't do it in the case of what happened, the awful thing that happened in Southport. So you can't have it both ways. Just
but they did release his name in the end.
But exactly. But in many cases we've not had that. And if you go back a year ago, in fact, the National Police Chief guidance was that you didn't have to release any of this. And this has all been driven up because of what happened in Southport.
But Rick, forgive me for interrupting. You say we've never had this before. Rick, I am a black female. And I think for many of your viewers who are of colour, let me tell you, I've lived in this country for 35, 40 years. And every time I would see a newspaper headline that said, "Mugger attacks poor defenceless woman on street," I would be cringing, because I'd be like, please don't say black male. Please don't say young black male. Just say criminal,
but Paula,
mugger.
what?
So to say that this isn't happening and it isn't real and it hasn't happened before, it happens all the time, and
I was pointing out the National Police Chief guidance change. Now, what has been happening is there's been a vacuum where people have created their own ideas, their own theories about who commits these crimes. And that's what happened in Southport last year.
And Nuneaton.
And Nuneaton. So you create a vacuum. Now, if you give people information and you say, right, this is this person, this is a local man, this is an asylum seeker, now then people can go and protest. And they can say, you know what, I am sick of the amount of people who are illegally entering the United Kingdom, and I do not want this happening. That's their choice to go and protest. They can do that. But when you create this vacuum, people don't know. And you know what happens when people don't know? They get scared, they get fearful, and they go out and they protest, and you do not know what can happen then. That is when the police are attacked. That is what has been happening in Nuneaton. That is what has been happening in Southport. And that is what was about to happen in Liverpool last year during the celebration for Liverpool winning the Premier League title, where this awful event where a man drove his car through a crowd and instantly, it was on Water Street. I lived on that street for 7 years. Instantly, I know some of the people there. There were instant rumours about who this was, and who did it, and how they did it. And it was about to ignite a flame. And what the police did there, setting an example, is they gave us some more detail. They helped us by giving that detail. They stopped the vacuum by being created in public. And what that has done, and now the Home Office, the Home Secretary and the government, and I actually agree with the government on this, has done, they said, we no longer need this vacuum. Actually, the public deserve more information. And this is not about picking on certain people. It's about filling a void and stopping violence.
And also stopping this void that happens, which just goes up like a tinderbox on social media, doesn't it? It spreads so quickly. I guess, why ethnicity? Do you not think, their mental health background or their criminal record background, do you not think that could maybe help satisfy people's insight into who this person is? Because that's ultimately what people want. They want that insight into why has this crime happened? Have we got transparency on what's going on here? So should those guidelines not be put in place instead?
Well, the guidelines compared to a year ago have completely opened up. And one of the reasons that it helps know about someone's ethnicity is it closes that picture, and it works both ways, Georgie. I've just given you the example of Liverpool. This is not a simple, we're just going to call people out because they're black, they're Asian, they're an asylum seeker. This fills the void both ways. It shuts down the social media problem that you have with it. Not for all people, but for enormous amounts. And when on the specific case of asylum seekers, because I can almost hear people screaming at their television, we don't know who is coming into this country so many times. No, we can argue till we're blue in the face about whether we think it's a good idea, but we don't know. It is undocumented males. And they are coming into this country, and we don't know where they're from, we don't know where they're back from, but we do know a lot of them have links to crime. We do know that. And I think it's very important for the public to know that when a crime is being committed, that it is by an asylum seeker, if that is the case, because it gives us a clear judgment that more needs to be done to protect the government, to protect people, to know who is coming into the country.
And this is where my concern rests, because we know that statistics are unreliable. It's accepted across the expert field that statistics are unreliable. Let's take, for example, violence against women and girls. We know that that is an underreported area of crime. It's accepted across the board. So if we are going to be relying on these statistics, my major concern is, how do we use the information that we have? Because we have had this information for at least since 1999. We've been collating all this data, but it's what we do with it and how we work with it. So if you're telling me that we're going to be collating this data because we want to understand how poor poorly people of colour fare in the criminal justice system, how poorly, for example, rape victims are treated when they enter the criminal justice system in an attempt to seek justice. If you're going to tell me it's about how we apply the policies to prevent crime in certain areas, looking at knife crime, etc. That's all positive. My concern is we are not giving specific information, and so that vacuum remains where we're looking at the negative emotional impact of that person over there, that black person over there, or that Muslim person over there.
But just on that, but statistics can't be negative or positive. So the Ministry of Justice statistics that you look at, Paula, in your work, you know, those stats suggest a disproportionate amount of foreign nationals are responsible for sex crimes compared to the amount of foreign nationals within the UK population. So it is absolutely rational for us to look at those figures and think, well, do we want a more undocumented foreign nationals, if we do not know their background, to come into the country?
You think that's an important part of the debate. Let me go to a few callers, because I'd love to get your thoughts on home at this. Shirley from Hampshire, what do you think? Do you think it's right that police are releasing their the suspect's ethnicity?
Yeah, I do, because I don't think this is anything to do with being racist. It's actually to do with identification.
OK, so it helps the public have a greater knowledge of who that criminal is, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know the lady's name who's sitting on the sofa there, but she identified herself as a black woman. So it is just a matter of identification.
But
I identify myself as a white woman.
But so how is that relevant in relation to a crime, Shirley? And that's what we're trying to understand. You know, and that's what Weston King is saying. How is that relevant to a crime?
Because when the police are investigating crimes, they have to use identification. That's part of.
But the police, I think the police have that information. They share that information, you know, within their sort of systems. It's just whether the public needs that information. As you know, someone sat at home, what do you do with that information if you found out that it's a Muslim man or a black lady?
Well, in my world, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's just a matter
which I guess goes back to that point. Why are they releasing that information then?
Because people like Shirley aren't the problem, are they? The people the people who are the problem are the people who don't have the information and then conjure up hate and decide to go on the streets and attack police officers because they have no idea what on earth is going on. And now, eventually, we are starting to get the public on getting some information. So then they go, oh, right, that didn't happen. I won't go out. I'll go and protest legitimately.
And those awful images there of the Southport riots last summer. Shirley, thank you very much for calling in. Josie from London, what are your thoughts on this?
I think there's no need for anyone to know the ethnicity of the suspect.
There's no need
to know. No need at all.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Because does it matter who committed a crime? A criminal commits a crime, not an ethnicity or a race or a religion. Saying someone is an asylum seeker who is Muslim, what difference does that make to the crime that they may have committed?
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, a lot. This is the sad case. To a lot of people, it means a lot.
It might mean a lot, but tell us what it means, because I don't understand what it means in terms of their propensity to commit a crime. What does it mean? Where I come from, how much money I have in my pocket.
It just stops violence. No, I'm not.
You're judging someone.
I'm certainly not judging anyone. I'm pointing out that it stops violence. And I've seen it.
Yeah, well, you know, we've seen the rioters on the streets because there hasn't been that information released. Josie, thank you very much for your call. We're going to move on now. Now, don't